Hello and welcome to the West London Sport QPR podcast with me, David McIntyre, and former QPR striker Kevin Gallen, who, according to a few of the young uns on social media recently, is absolutely loving Rangers' ropey start to the season, apparently because of bad feeling towards the club and a desperation to be proved right, having dared to suggest that the sparkly Christian Nuri revolution might in fact prove to be a bumpy path. Kev, I think actually it's fair to say that quiet resignation about what we thought would transpire would be a better way of describing how we felt before the start of the season. But anyway, we are where we are, 9 games in, 1 win in the bottom 3. Why and what needs to change?
Well, just first off, I'd just like to clarify that I haven't been sacked by West London Sport. Thank you, David. I'm from a long holiday, so just to clarify, can you clarify that for me as well?
I'm not to confirm or deny that you've been sacked, but you're here now, and we've agreed to extend your short-term contract
week by week. Yes, regarding we're talking about the start of the season, but there's no doubt about it. It hasn't been great. I've watched most of the games. If I haven't been there, I've watched most of the games on TV live. And I mean, it hasn't been great. I actually think the best game we played, performance-wise, was against Hull, where we were, the first 10 minutes, we had some really good chances and we didn't take. And their keeper, I have to say, I was very impressed by their goalkeeper, not only with his saves, but the way he was. His distribution from out the back and the risk taking. And I was, if I was a Hull manager, I would have been heart attacks with what he was doing, like passing it. But fair play to him. It worked for him on the night. But I thought QPR, that was their best performance. The game we actually did win against Luton, I thought, we could have easily been 2 or 3-0 down before we equalised. I mean, it was one-way traffic in the first half. Second half, Nardi made a really good one-on-one save against Adebayo. I think I've got his name right or wrong, whatever, but you know who he is. And we then went on to win that game. In my opinion, Nardi has been the best signing so far of the season, so far of the summer for QPR. But other than that, I don't think it's been great. I think we've been good in parts of games, but during the 90 minutes, we need to improve, and we need to improve quickly.
I mean, some of those signings during the summer, Kev, there was a lot of optimism about them. I mean, you work in the football recruitment area. That's your realm. You know about it. You're involved in that. And as some of the feedback on the players, not a lot was known about Santos, but some of the feedback on the 2 midfielders in particular, Maddison and Varane, suggested that they might find the going tough. There's a bit of hype about them, but some of the feedback we had was that, they were, to put it a kind way, they might take some time to adapt. Some of the not so kind reports were they were frankly slow, weak, and not cut out for the Championship. I mean, it's early days, but from what you've seen so far, Seller as well, obviously, has had a bit of a tricky start. What are your thoughts on those signings? Because at the moment, again, it is early days, but the kind of feedback I was hearing on those players during the summer from people in the kind of football recruitment realm, I have to say, so far it's been pretty much on the money.
Well, look, when you sign, was it 9 or 10 players during the summer, and not one of those players has had any championship experience. I've played in the Championship. I've watched it for the last, since I retired, 10, 12, 13 years. And I realised what a tough league it is. It's Saturday, Tuesday, a lot of the time, majority of the time. There ain't much time for recovery, and it's much more physical than the German or Austrian or the Portuguese, where they play a Saturday more. That's their fixtures, is Saturday, where England is, Saturday, Tuesday. Then you got your cup games, your League Cup, and then will come in January, FA Cups. And yes, it's a tough league. But then if you go down that route of signing everyone 10 players and saying it's going to take time to adapt, but then you're in trouble. You're going to be in trouble if the results don't go away, and you're waiting for them to adapt. But is there time to, do you have time? Does the manager have time? Or, if you lose a certain amount of games or you don't win games, you're under pressure. Not only are you under pressure from the fans, you're under pressure from the people who employ you, the directors, the chairman, and the director of football, and etc. So I always thought it was going to be a risk. I wasn't surprised when I saw the fixture list that that this would be the situation. I was surprised that we beat Luton, but I thought we could beat Plymouth. I thought we could have a real chance of beating Hull, and that hasn't happened. The Championship's an unforgiving league, and if you're not at it and you're not doing it right, you won't pick up points. So the players who have come in, they need to improve very quickly. Regarding the centre midfielders, Varane, I haven't really seen anything yet that says to me he's going to be a good player. I'm only judging on what I'm seeing. Maddison, I think, is talented. I think he's got good technique, but I believe that QPR should have got a more of an athletic runner in that part of the pitch, because that's what I think we're lacking. I think we're lacking a bit of pace forward in the forward areas, and I think we're going into the season with only 2 centre forwards. I think that's a massive. That's not good. That's not good. Going into the start of the season until January with only 2 centre forwards, and to be fair to Frey, he's done well. He's worked hard, and he gives it his all. But in my opinion, if you have 3 centre forwards at QPR, Frey should be your number 3, where he comes on for the last 10, 15 minutes or plays the odd game, but he comes on for the last 15, 20 minutes when it's 0-0, you're kicking down to the loft, you're putting pressure on, you're putting balls in the box. That's what he should be there for. But at the moment, he's our number 1 centre forward.
Yeah, I mean, I joked at the start, Kev, about what one or two people were saying on social media. But joking aside, on a more serious note, I think that what a lot of fans I notice are beginning to talk about is the style of play of the manager and whether he has the players to implement that style of play. I think we all saw last season that he was, quite pragmatic when he came in terms of, what was done to get the points that were needed. We all thought that this season would tell us something about what he wants to do going forward. I mean, what are your thoughts on that in terms of the way that he seems to want to play, and whether he has the players to do it, and whether some of the players who've been brought in look like they fit what he wants to do?
Well, I think I spoke with you on this at the end of last season. He came in and he wanted to play, I think, the way he wanted to play, a more possession-based style, and he got a few results. We got to late December, January, and it all went a bit pear-shaped. And then he thought, and he changed tact, and I'll give him credit, because it's not the sort of Spanish type of way. He went big, strong. He brought in Isaac Hayden, he brought Addison, he brought Michael Frey, all over Frey and Finger 6'2", 6'3". Isaac Hayden parked him in front of the back, put Jimmy Dunn right back, another header, because we kept conceding a lot of goals from set pieces. And then after January, we started scoring set pieces and not conceding set pieces, and we were hard and strong and really tough to beat. I think I went to watch QPR v Swansea away, and we won 1-0. And at the end of the game, I think the smallest QPR player was, I remember noting it in my head, the smallest QPR players was either Willock or Sinclair Armstrong. They were the smallest players after all the subs. So he went big, strong. Then I always said, and I said at the end of the season on this podcast, is he going to go back to what he really wants to do and be, passing and possession type team? Because even though we were winning at the end of last season, our possession was never really above the opposition. it might happen maybe once or twice, but in 18 games or something, our possession was always, even at home, our possession was a lot less than the opposition. So now I think the model of the club is sign some young players. And then this is the model. This is nothing new. This is the model of most clubs in the country. Sign players from under 24, try and develop them, play a certain brand of football, and sell them on for a higher price and reinvest in the squad. And that's what I think QPR are trying to do at this time. But that's all well and good. You've got to get results at the same time. You can have that model, but you need results. And you've got to keep them. You've got to entertain the fans. You've got to get points, and you've got to keep out of the bottom three. And that hasn't happened at the moment. So, you know, it'd be interesting to see what happens against Portsmouth, where everyone's talking about getting Colback back, Jake Clark-Saw. These are players that, I mean, Colback's a 33-year-old. I'm not saying he's a good player and he knows the Championship, but that's what people are talking about, getting Colback back to play ahead of Varane, who we just signed 1.5 million, 2 million, where Maddison, was he 3.5 million euros? A lot of money for QPR. We haven't spent that sort of money for a long time. I actually think technically he's a very good player, but I don't think I think he should be playing. He can't be playing with Field, in my opinion. I mean, the setup against Derby was you've got the back four: Ashby, Dunn, Cook, Powell. Powell's very attacking, not a great defender. Ashby, I don't really know much about him because he's only played a few games. And then you had Fields as the holding midfielder. The rest of the team are Maddison, an attacking player, Anderson, an attacking player, Dembele, Sato, and Frey all going forward. You're playing away from home. I believe that you have to have a little bit of a base and solidarity, maybe more solid, and then play from there. Maybe get to half time or 60 minutes and have a go. I think I think that's too open for me personally.
I mean, in terms of that style of play that he favours the manager and the transfer dealings and so on, there was a lot of optimism in the summer, but there is now, you know, some talk among the fans about how that's going. So I thought I should actually do my job and put some of those questions people have been asking to the manager himself. And we can hear that now. But let's play that now.
Last season, you were quite pragmatic in terms of the way the team played in order to get the points that were so obviously needed. There was an expectation, I think, this season that the team would play more in your preferred style. Bearing in mind the early results, do you think you'll need to compromise again?
I have a way of thinking where sometimes I think that we tend to to think that the manager has more influence than what we do. The gameplay belong to the players, and in that sense, I remember always when Ancelotti used to say that in the beginning of his career, he had a way of thinking, especially a formation on how we like to play, and over years he adapted to the players. And that's exactly my way of thinking. Of course, I have a preferred way of playing. I think that everybody does. Everybody who loves football, who likes football, has a certain way on our heads of how we would like our perfect team to play. But the reality is that the players are the ones running the show. And what we tried to do last season, and we're going to try to do once again this season, is to try to get the best of the players that we got. And that's where we are. I think that we need to be aware that it's a change on many players, finding how demanding is this league from a physical point of view, from the fixtures are coming very, very close to each other game after game. And I think we start to see how those players are adapting. I think one of the main positive things from the last game is to see Koki Saito performance. I think he did really, really well, creating chances, playing at a high level in tight spaces, getting out, showing quality. And there is more to see. I think as well, Nico, the way he took the responsibility to take the penalty and the way he scored the penalty shows that he's a quality player with a lot of personality. My opinion, the first 15-20 minutes of the second half of Zan were very encouraging. He did almost everything well. He got a chance. So I think that it's about time that those players will show the level. And that is my job to try to get the best of all of them. But what is pragmatic, what is my style. My style is always the players that I do have, and my job is to try to get the best of all of them and ask them things that they can do, not the opposite.
And given that some goals are being conceded after players are giving the ball away near their own box, can you understand why some fans are maybe questioning whether you have players that are capable of playing in the style that you seem to want the team to play in?
The logic of the fans is that there is no logic behind. It's just the logic of the results. And I do totally understand that when the results are not going our way, will be more people moaning and having doubts. Last season, if you ask the same fans how I was as a manager or how good the team was, if you ask them straight after Leeds game, I can tell you that not even Brazil on 70s were better than us, probably. While now, probably there are a lot of League 6 that are better than us. And that's the logic of fans. I said many times before that we need to be angry when we lose games. It's fair. It's part of why we're here. I can tell you something. There is no one, not even the most engaged fan in the world for QPR that wants to win more than what I do. So they can be calm that I'm trying to do all my best on my capabilities to make sure that the players understand that there are certain situations where we can play, certain situations where we need to make a good clearance and sometimes put it behind the ball stand, because that's part of football as well. And that's where in the process where we are. I said as well before, football is a game of mistakes, and usually the one who made less mistakes is the one who wins the game. And mistakes as well in terms of the way you finish goal chances. You can create 25 goal chances that if you don't score, perhaps you will concede in one own goal and then steal the position with only 0 shots on goal, you lose the game. So I think that I understand that the fans are not happy, same as I am not, but I'm going to ask them to give final answers and final how you call it? Decision, whatever you mean, at the end of the season. Then they can decide if I'm as good as I was after Leeds or I'm a really bad coach.
And in terms of players that you have, you made it clear during the summer that you had your thoughts on what was needed when it came to bringing players in, and you made those thoughts clear to the club. Are you happy with the transfer business that was done by the club during that period?
I explained before that the club has a model, and in that sense we try to take the decisions all together, knowing my thoughts, their thoughts, and at the end, it's a teamwork.
You always said that the players coming in from various different leagues during the summer would need time to adapt. There was a lot of optimism given the way that last season ended. Do you feel that maybe some underestimated the challenge in terms of integrating those new players into the squad?
If you remember, I spoke a lot during the summer about expectations, and I spoke about expectations from the opponents. Probably, I gave the example of Leeds, but many others will not come. Perhaps I'm not saying relax, but thinking that this will be an easy game to play against us. I said as well about media having high expectations because the amount of points that we collected since last winter. And especially from our fans, what I need to tell them is that the reality is that, for instance, on Wednesday we play against a team who spent on Tuesday, was against a team who spent I think over 25 million on players. That's the reality in the league we play. So trust me that I'm doing my best to make sure that we can cope with expectations, because I like the pressure. I like when people expect things from us, and we're going to try to do our best to be at the level that they want. 8 games. Let's see how we can improve, and that's what my target is, to make sure that we improve every day.
Well, I should have added, by the way, that this conversation actually took place before the Derby game, Kev, so hence the reference there to 8 games and other things that you said. What did you make of what you said, Kev?
Well, I understand. I understand what he's saying about, the comment about you try and adapt to the players that you have. I just don't know what the whole truth is who's, and on this West London podcast, I have said it over the last 3-4 years, how long we've been doing it, is who is actually in charge of recruitment? Is it the manager? Is it the director of football? Is it a bit of both? And, you know, and that is a major thing, because if the director of football is bringing the players and he's not liking the players, then there's going to be a fallout. Now, or is there a case of it, as it is, where they both decide, they get names thrown at them and then they say, yeah, this one, then that's okay. But then that's another situation, because if the manager gets sacked and the manager has been brought in players, the next manager comes in and goes, I don't like these players. One second. So, sorry. So, I don't know what I don't know if you know, David. Is it the scouting, recruitment? Are they 100% behind bringing in the players, or is it the manager has a say? He said there he does have a say, but I'm not too sure, because they brought in 2 right backs, and I think when Cook and Clark-Sauter are fit, who are the mainstay of our 2 centre halves, I think he'll play Jimmy Dunn right back. That's what I believe.
Yeah, I mean, I think the right back situation, I think, really does show some of the shortcomings of the club's recruitment during the summer. The fact that really from the get-go, he's never wanted to play Santos much in that position. And again, you know, that can be part of him adapting to English football. It may be that during the fullness of time, that turns out to be his position for QPR, and he plays well there. I mean, the current setup is that the coach, as he is, and by his own admission, he's just a coach, will have a say in terms of the profile of player that they're looking for.
Yeah.
And then it's up to others then to find players that match that profile. Notwithstanding the fact that there may be the odd player he knows, like Lucas Anderson would be an example of that, where obviously somebody that he's familiar with. But generally, it is that European model that's being implemented more and more in this country, where the manager is a coach who simply tells the powers that be what kind of thing he wants, and it's then their job to go out and get those players. With the current reliance on data, where there is as always, an amazing amount of nonsense talked, hype, suggestions that something new and brave is happening. The reliance on data really has been common in football and even at QPR for a long time. And I think, I mean, this was something that I said during the summer, and it didn't really go down well with some, was that there was a perception that what was happening was new. But of course it's not. I mean, data-led signings from abroad are something that QPR have been doing for a while. They made a raft of signings a few years ago. You'll remember the Poulters and the Yennies and, you know, people like Pavel and people like that. In fact, a number of signings were made previously that were very, very data-led. The one that always springs to mind for me is Charon Cherry. That was one that really was led by the data going on him. Geordie Device was another one. Again, they needed a defender, and the computer was very much saying that he was the man. So it's nothing new there. I think what is new is that there perhaps is less of the old school eye test going on. And I think if you wanted to be a cynic, you might say that maybe gives you an inkling as to why some of the signings so far haven't gone spectacularly well. I don't think that ingredient is there at the moment. I mean, what do you think of this whole reliance on data?
Sorry, regarding data, but and data comes into, like, you're 100% right. Data has been at QPR and has been at clubs over 10 years, I'd say. But you can't take the data about someone's attitude in the dressing room, or their desire, or their heart, or their passion. It's all about technical and stats, which is all well and good, but, you know, like you said, the eye and speaking to someone and knowing their background and what they're like off the pitch and how they integrate into the changing room and stuff like that. That's data cannot pick stuff up like that.
Yeah, I mean, I don't really want to sound like an old dinosaur when it comes to this subject, because a few years ago I would have told you that, you know, data analytics is very important, and clubs that aren't using it when it comes to their recruitment are behind massively and need to get up to date. But you can go too far the other way. And I think some of my kind of concerns about the data, Kev, would be, what I always say about the data, the attitude of the player is a good point. I always ask the question, how does the data-led approach help you pick up the 18-year-old who's just come on the radar at Harrow Borough, for example, who might go on to better things? I think data doesn't tell you too much about the standard of play you're up against. As you mentioned, some leagues in Europe, particularly outside the top leagues, the standard is not great. So I think perhaps the data can be skewed by that. The club's two most sellable assets probably in the last few years have been Eze and Ilias Chair. I would question what data would have said on them at the age of 17, 18 or 19. So there are limitations to it. And I think that there is a risk. Risky is how I describe the club's recruitment during the summer generally, both in terms of the reliance on data and players from outside these shores. It's tough. It's a really, really tough ask. And I said at the start, yes, I felt for all his good work last season that perhaps this was an even bigger challenge for the manager this time around, integrating all those players.
So we're talking about 10. Is it 10 signings, 11, whatever, 10 maybe, 10 signings. I'm going to just go back. This is what I might have done if I was in charge, was 5 from abroad who hasn't got Champions experience, and maybe 5 who've had Champions experience or League One and a good League One experience in this country. That's what I would do in that situation. Look, they might say there was no players. They might say it was too expensive, but that's sort of, go all out 10 or whatever, 11 or 9, 10 or 11 with no champion experience. And they might come good. We might have to wait. But then, if we don't win some games in the next 3 or 4 months and they don't come good, I'm a little bit worried. The winter months are coming up. We've got two home games, massive game against Portsmouth, which I think is winnable by, I expect us to win. Coventry actually have a decent team on their day and they can turn up, but they've got some good players. But the next 4 or 5 are really difficult games. So we need to pick up, I would say, at least 3 to 4 points in the next 2 games. I know I'm moving on probably to your next question, but, what I'm trying to say is you're waiting for these players to adapt. Has the manager got time for them to adapt? Because,
yeah, I mean, I think it's perfectly.
It's always been a results business.
Yeah, I mean, it's perfectly reasonable, I think, to say, look, we've signed players that we're always going to need time to adapt, and we'll just have to see how it goes. That's perfectly reasonable. There's nothing wrong with that. But I think 2 things there. First off, if you look across the division, plenty of teams have signed a raft of players that, in theory, would need time to adapt. And they're picking up more points. So it's just not just a QPR thing. Rangers aren't the only club to have brought in players with those profiles. And also what you were saying about getting the balance between, signing those type of players and bringing in more experienced operators. And I think I'd make the comparison with a couple of summers ago when Mick Beale was the manager, Kev. And this was not a reliance on data, but just a similarity in terms of the profile of player that we're bringing in. That they brought in Taylor Richards, Tyler Roberts, Jake Clark-Salter, Ethan Laird, Leon Balogun, all these players. And I felt at the time that individually they were all worth signing. All of them as individuals, I personally would have signed while understanding that they had checkered histories, injury records, etc., etc. What you don't do is sign all of them, and that's what happened during that summer. And then, of course, a couple of months down the line, all of them, are barely playing. So it's a similar thing here, isn't it? Where there's been no attempt to kind of balance out the 1 or 2 signings that you might take a chance on and might need to give some time to, with some pretty, bog standard championship operators, the type of which you need. And of course, they had in Isaac Hayden, who they've ended up not bringing back. You mentioned Coventry and Portsmouth games coming up. Neither of those 2 have made a particularly good start. Then before we finish, you've already said that you fancy Rangers to beat Coventry. To beat Portsmouth.
Just to go on one thing, I think definitely need, coming into the future in January, we need another centre forward. Something different. We've got two, as you call, so-called number 9s, that sort of style, big. I think we need something different in the squad, where they can find it, but we need something a little bit different. Someone who maybe a little quicker, who runs in behind. Just touching on Salah, he hasn't impressed me at all. He come with a little bit of hype, with his background and scoring goals. I was very disappointed in his debut against West Brom, not because he didn't play well, but because he didn't run around enough. He didn't. And by the way, West Brom have got some 2 good centre halves, so I'll give him a little bit of that. But that game, you're playing on your debut, and I'm thinking, come on, running behind, bang into them, make their life a little bit difficult for them. And he disappointed me. He didn't do anything. He didn't hold the ball up. He didn't make any runs in behind. He didn't win a header. And I was thinking, this could be a one-off. And at the moment, he needs to, he's our marquee centre-forward signing, and he's on the bench. He's coming on for the last 10 minutes. So he needs to really get going quicker, because Frey's done well. Fair play to him. He's done better than what I expected, but he ain't going to get you the goals to move us up the league. So we need someone to score goals, or we have to spread it around the pitch.
Well, with Salah, again, it's difficult because he's only at the start, so it seems harsh. But you brought him up, and you were a striker, so I will ask you about him. The question that I think when I look at the guys, whether he scores or whether he doesn't matter too much at this stage. He is settling in. He is new to it. But what are his attributes, Kevin? What does he do from looking at him so far that he is particularly good at, aside from scoring goals, whether or not he does that? Because my early impression of him, looking at him, is this guy needs to be a finisher, because I don't really see a lot else.
Well, no, that's a great question, because I don't see him being, at the moment, from what I've seen, I can only go on what I've seen since the start of the season. He hasn't won many balls. I haven't seen him win any headers. I don't see him being aggressive and being a handful for the centre forwards, which Michael Frey is, to be fair to him. I don't see him as a link-up man. And I've got my mates who are saying, yeah, he's a finisher and he needs chances. And I'm thinking, well, plays for QPR. I don't play for Man City, where you get chances like on a plate and tap-ins. At some stage, you've got to either, the ball comes to you, you turn and you shoot and it goes in. Do you know what I mean? You make your own chances. You run across a defender, and at the moment, I'm not seeing anything. So it's difficult, because you can't write someone off. We're only in October, but he needs to improve a hell of a lot at the moment for me, because he ain't, like you said, his attributes or his assets, at the moment, I'm not seeing anything. And he hasn't played that much in the last few games, but when I have seen him play, I'm thinking, come on, mate, put yourself about and run about a little bit, run in the channel, or, whatever you said about Sinclair Armstrong, he'd come on for 15 minutes, he'd lift the crowd, he'd run in behind, and he'd smash into the defenders, and the crowd would get behind him, and there's a bit of excitement. Not saying he's anywhere near the finished article, because he's not, but he'd give you something. At the moment, Salah comes on, and you're like, what are you going to do? What, you think you're just going to get a tap in every time you come on or you play? It doesn't work like that.
Let's try and end on a more optimistic note, though, Kev. Portsmouth and Coventry, then. What do you reckon?
Well, I think we'll beat Portsmouth. I really do. I think we've got better players than them. I think it's our first 3 o'clock kickoff, so I think the crowd will really be good and up for it. So I think we'll beat them 2-0. Coventry, I think that'll be a tougher game. I think I'll go 1-1, but I think we will beat Portsmouth 2-0, and I think we need to. Not only because we haven't, we haven't won since the start of the season at home, but we need to get out of that bottom 3, because it's always about, when you look at the league table and you're seeing that line above you, and that ain't good. I do believe we've got better players than them. I think it's massive that Jake Clark-Salter gets back fit and plays alongside Cook, because they're like a mainstay and a solid 2 centre halves. And I think we need Cole back in there as well with Field to give us a little bit more strength and experience and more solid going forward. So I'd say I'm going 2-0 QPR, Portsmouth 0, and I think it'll be 1-1 against Coventry.
Yeah, I agree. I think a win against Portsmouth, 4 points from the 2 games. And after that, I think the situation would look slightly better, particularly obviously with Chair coming back as well. We'll be back hopefully after the Coventry game. Until then, cheers everyone.